My brother called crying, begging for help with his baby's hospital bills. I wired him $7,000 without thinking twice. 2 weeks later, his wife posted a party with 80 guests and a live DJ. I wasn't invited. I didn't confront him. I just sent one text. My name's Jacob. I'm 34, and I need to tell you about the moment I realized my own brother thought of me as an ATM with a heartbeat. Not a person, not family, just a guy dumb enough to hand over thousands of dollars because someone he loved asked him to. And honestly, the worst part isn't even the money. It's the fact that I sat in my truck outside a gas station at 11 o'clock at night, staring at an Instagram story of a party I wasn't invited to, and the DJ was playing a song I introduced my brother to when we were kids. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning so you can fully appreciate how spectacular this train wreck gets. I grew up in a small town outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. The kind of place where everybody knows your business but pretends they don't. And the biggest event of the year is the church barbecue that somehow always ends in an argument about brisket. My parents split when I was 9 and my brother Colton was 6. Dad moved to Florida with a woman named Jolene who sold essential oils and believed the moon landing was filmed in a warehouse in Burbank. He sent a birthday card every other year, usually late, always with a $20 bill inside that felt more like a receipt for his guilt than an actual gift. Mom raised us by herself, working double shifts at a hospital cafeteria during the week and cleaning office buildings on weekends. We didn't have much, but she made sure we had enough. She was the kind of woman who would eat a sleeve of saltines for dinner so we could have the last 2 chicken thighs. I didn't realize that until I was older, and when I did, it hit me like a freight train. She never once complained about it, never made us feel like burdens. She just did what needed doing and asked for nothing in return, which, looking back, might be where I learned the habit that would eventually cost me $22,000 in a relationship with my brother. Growing up, Colton and I were close the way brothers are when you share a room the size of a walk-in closet and your only entertainment is arguing about whose turn it is on the PlayStation. He was the charming one. Everybody loved Colton. Teachers, neighbors, girls at school. He had this way of making you feel like the most important person in the room, which is a great quality until you realize he does it to everyone and means it for nobody. I was the quiet one. I got decent grades, worked at a hardware store starting at 16, and saved every paycheck like my life depended on it because, in a way, it did. Mom got sick my junior year of high school. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to knock her out of work for 3 months. I covered the electric bill and groceries without telling Colton because he was 15 and I didn't want him to worry. That's the dynamic we had. I handled things. He existed. After high school, I went to community college, then transferred to Tennessee State. Studied accounting because I liked numbers and because accountants don't get laid off during recessions, which felt important given my childhood. I graduated, moved to Nashville, and slowly started building something. Nothing flashy. I got a job at a mid-sized firm, worked my way up, and by the time I was 30, I was pulling in a comfortable 6 figures. I bought a house, a real one, with a yard and a mailbox that didn't lean sideways. I started dating a woman named Sutton who was an architect and had the kind of laugh that made you forget whatever stupid thing you were stressed about. Life was good. Life was really, really good. Colton took a different path. He barely graduated high school, not because he wasn't smart, but because effort wasn't really his thing when a smile and a good excuse could get him through most situations. After graduation, he bounced between jobs the way a pinball bounces between bumpers, with about the same level of intentional direction. He worked at a car dealership for a while, then a gym where he was supposed to be a personal trainer, but spent most of his time flirting with the front desk staff. Then he tried to start a landscaping business that lasted about as long as a snowman in July. He married a woman named Brielle when he was 26. Brielle was the kind of person who posted inspirational quotes on Instagram about being a boss babe while simultaneously asking our mom for gas money. She had expensive taste and a talent for making Colton feel like he needed to provide a lifestyle he absolutely could not afford. I tried to talk to him about it once, and he told me I didn't understand because I'd never been in love. I was literally engaged to Sutton at the time, but sure, Colton, sure. Despite all of this, I loved my brother. You don't grow up sharing a room with someone, staying up late talking about what kind of house you're going to buy your mom someday, and just stop caring about them because they make dumb decisions. So when he called me crying on a Tuesday night last October, I picked up on the second ring. He sounded like someone had ripped something out of him. His voice was shaking so bad I thought someone had died. He told me that his daughter Ivy, who was 11 months old at the time, had been rushed to the emergency room. She'd had a febrile seizure, and they were running tests because the doctors were worried about something more serious. He said the initial bill was already climbing and his insurance had lapsed because he'd missed a payment. He said he didn't know what to do. He said he felt like a failure. And then he said the words that I can still hear when I close my eyes at night. He said, "Jake, you're the only person I can ask. I don't have anyone else." And what was I supposed to do? Say no? Tell my brother, whose baby might be seriously ill, that he should figure it out himself? I'm not built that way. Mom raised me to take care of family, and Colton was family whether he deserved it or not. So I went to my computer, opened my banking app, and wired him $7,000. $7,000. I didn't ask for a payment plan. I didn't ask for proof of the hospital bill. I didn't even tell Sutton until the next morning because I knew she'd want to discuss it, and I didn't want to be talked out of something I felt in my gut was the right thing to do. When I told her, she looked at me with this expression that was 50% love and 50% you sweet, gullible idiot. She didn't say anything negative. She just squeezed my hand and said, "You're a good brother, Jacob." And I believed that. I really did. For the next 2 weeks, I checked in on Colton regularly. He was grateful, texting me updates about Ivy, telling me the doctors were optimistic, sending me pictures of her smiling in her little hospital gown that had cartoon elephants on it. I felt good. I felt like I'd done exactly what a big brother is supposed to do. And then, on a random Thursday night, I was scrolling through Instagram while Sutton was asleep next to me, and I saw it. Brielle had posted a story, and in that story, there were balloons, streamers, a table full of catered food, at least 80 people, and a DJ. An actual DJ, with a turntable and speakers, and one of those light-up setups that probably cost more than my first car. I sat up in bed so fast that Sutton stirred beside me and mumbled something about turning off the light. But I couldn't move. I was staring at my phone, watching Brielle's Instagram story on a loop like some kind of emotional hostage. The caption read, "Ivy's first birthday bash. Our princess deserves the world." And there was Ivy, in a custom pink tutu dress, sitting in a high chair in front of a 3-tier cake with fondant flowers that looked like something off a baking competition show. There were balloon arches, plural, like more than one arch made entirely of balloons, which if you've ever priced that out, is not cheap. There was a photo booth with props. There were matching outfits for Brielle and Ivy. And in the background, clear as day, there was a DJ spinning records while toddlers stumbled around the dance floor like tiny drunk people, which I suppose is what toddlers essentially are. I watched every slide, every story, every tagged photo from guests who were apparently having the time of their lives at this party that my $7,000 almost certainly funded. And not once, in any photo, in any video, in any tagged post, was there any mention of me. I wasn't in a single frame. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't thanked. I wasn't even there because I hadn't been invited. Let me say that again so it really lands. My brother called me sobbing about hospital bills for his daughter. I wired him $7,000 within the hour. And 2 weeks later, his wife threw an 80-person birthday party with a live DJ and catered food, and I didn't even get a text saying, "Hey, we're having a thing for Ivy this weekend. Want to come?" I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling for what felt like an hour. My chest felt tight, not in a heart attack way, more in a my body is physically rejecting the level of betrayal I am experiencing way. I kept running the math in my head because that's what accountants do when they're emotionally devastated. We do math. A DJ for a party that size runs at least $800 to $1,000. Catering for 80 people, even on the cheap side, is another $1,500 minimum. Balloon arches, decorations, custom cake, photo booth, party favors. You're looking at $4,000 to $5,000 easy, maybe more, for a 1-year-old's birthday party. A 1-year-old who will remember absolutely none of it, and who would have been equally happy chewing on a cardboard box, which is what Ivy's actual favorite activity was according to every other video Brielle posted. The next morning, I showed Sutton. She watched the stories in silence, then set my phone down on the kitchen counter and said, very calmly, "Jacob, if you don't address this, I will, and I promise you my version involves a lot more 4-letter words than yours." Sutton is the most measured person I know. So the fact that she was ready to go to war told me everything I needed to know about how bad this was. But here's the thing about me. I don't blow up. I don't yell. I don't send angry paragraphs at 2 in the morning. When I'm hurt, I go quiet. And I went very, very quiet. I didn't call Colton. I didn't text him. I just sat with it for a few days, turning it over in my head like a rock I kept finding new sharp edges on. And during those few days, something interesting happened. The grateful texts from Colton stopped. The IV updates stopped. The "you're the best brother ever" messages disappeared like they'd never existed. It was like the moment the money cleared, I'd served my purpose and could be shelved until the next crisis. A week went by, then 10 days, then 2 full weeks of silence from my brother, the same brother who had been sobbing into his phone about how I was his only hope. I started going back through our text history, and something ugly became clear. Every single time Colton reached out to me first, money was involved. Not every conversation turned into a request, but every conversation he initiated eventually got there. He'd ask about my job, I'd tell him, and then a few days later it would be, "Hey, things are tight this month. Could you spot me a few hundred?" He'd wish me happy birthday, and then casually mention that his car needed new brakes. It was like emotional priming. Warm me up, make me feel connected, then slide the ask in sideways so it felt natural. And I fell for it every single time because he was my brother and I wanted to believe the best in him. I sat down one night and added it all up. Over the past 4 years, I had given Colton just over $22,000. $22,000. That's a down payment on a house. That's a year of someone's rent. And in return, I got occasional texts, 0 invitations to family events on his side, and the privilege of watching his wife throw a party funded by my generosity that I wasn't welcome to attend. Sutton found me at the kitchen table with a spreadsheet open and a glass of bourbon I hadn't touched. She sat down across from me and said, "How much?" I told her. She closed her eyes for a long moment and then said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And I told her I honestly didn't know, because the anger wasn't clean. It was tangled up with love and obligation and guilt and this voice in the back of my head that sounded exactly like my mother saying, "He's your brother, Jacob. You take care of family." A few days later, Mom called me. She said Colton had told her that I was being distant and that she was worried we were fighting. I asked her if she'd seen the photos from Ivy's birthday party. She went quiet. She said she had. I asked her if she noticed I wasn't in any of them. She went quiet again, longer this time. Then she said, "I thought maybe you were busy." And something about the way she said it, like she was trying to give everyone an excuse, like she was papering over the crack so the wall could keep standing, that was the moment something shifted in me. Because even my mom, who had sacrificed everything for her boys, was willing to look the other way rather than confront the fact that one of her sons was using the other. I told Mom I loved her and I'd talk to her soon. Then I hung up and I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could even turn the key. Not because I was sad, because I was making a decision. And the decision was this. I was done being the family safety net. I was done being the guy who writes checks and gets written out of the story. I was done being reliable to people who couldn't be bothered to save me a seat at a table I paid for. That night, I picked up my phone and opened my text thread with Colton. I stared at it for a long time. All those messages, all that history, birthday wishes and inside jokes and links to funny videos, and underneath all of it, a pattern so obvious I couldn't believe I'd missed it. I typed one message. Just one. Short. Calm. No anger. No accusations. No essay about how hurt I was. I read it back 3 times to make sure it said exactly what I meant and nothing more. Then I hit send. The text said, "Hey Colton, saw the party looked great. Wish I could have been there. Going forward, I think it's best if we keep things between us straightforward. I love you, but I can't keep being the person you only call when you need something. I hope you understand." Then I turned off my phone, poured that bourbon I'd been ignoring, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't expected. I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a boulder up a hill I didn't even realize I was climbing, and I'd finally just set it down. The boulder was still there. The hill was still there, but it wasn't on my shoulders anymore, and that made all the difference in the world. What happened next was exactly what you'd expect, and somehow still caught me off guard. Colton didn't respond for 3 days. When he finally did, it wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a wall of text that started with "wow, okay," and ended with him calling me selfish for making his daughter's birthday about money. He said Brielle had planned the party months ago and that the $7,000 had gone entirely to Ivy's medical bills. He said I was being paranoid and jealous, and that maybe if I spent less time counting other people's dollars I'd be happier. He said our mom agreed that I was being ridiculous, which I later confirmed was a lie because mom told me she said no such thing. And then, the cherry on top, he said maybe the reason I wasn't invited to the party was because nobody wants the guy who keeps a mental ledger at a celebration. I read that text sitting in my office on a Wednesday afternoon, and I actually laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh that comes out when reality is so absurd that your brain doesn't know what else to do with it. Because here was my brother, the guy who couldn't keep a job for more than 8 months, lecturing me about keeping a mental ledger while the literal receipts of my generosity were still warm in my bank account. I didn't respond. Not because I was taking the high road. Because there was nothing left to say. You can't reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into. And Colton had decided that I was the villain in his story, because that was easier than looking in the mirror. The fallout was swift. Brielle posted a vague Instagram story about toxic family members who try to control you with money. That got about 40 likes and a dozen comments from people I'd never met calling me everything short of a Bond villain. Colton told our cousin Deacon that I'd cut him off financially because I was jealous of his family, which was a creative reinterpretation of events, to put it mildly. My Aunt Rosalind called me to say she'd heard I was being difficult and maybe I should be the bigger person. I thanked her for her input and gently reminded her that being the bigger person is what got me $22,000 lighter and 0 invitations richer. For a while, it got to me. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. There were nights I lay awake replaying every conversation, every time I handed over money, wondering if I could have done something differently, wondering if I was the problem. Sutton would find me staring at nothing and she'd sit next to me without saying a word, just being there, which is its own kind of love. My mom tried to play mediator for about 2 weeks until she realized neither of us was budging. And then she did what she always does. She called less and prayed more. The lowest point came about 6 weeks after the text. I was at a family gathering at my aunt's house for Thanksgiving, and Colton was there with Brielle and Ivy. He walked in, saw me, and acted like I was a stranger at a bus stop. Not hostile, just nothing, like I was background furniture. Brielle made a big show of saying hello to everyone in the room except me and Sutton. Ivy was toddling around, and when she wandered over to me and grabbed my pant leg, Brielle swooped in and picked her up without making eye contact, like I was a contaminated surface. Sutton gripped my hand under the table so hard I thought she might leave bruises, but she didn't say a word because we'd agreed beforehand that we weren't going to make a scene. I drove home from that Thanksgiving dinner feeling emptier than I had in years. Not angry, just hollow, like I'd been erased from a family I'd spent my whole life propping up. Sutton looked over at me in the passenger seat and said, "You know this isn't your fault, right?" And I said, "Yeah," but I didn't believe it yet. The shift didn't happen overnight. It happened in small pieces, the way most real change does. First, Sutton sat me down and said something I needed to hear. She said, "Jacob, you've spent your whole life being the responsible one for people who never asked you to be and never thank you when you were. It's time to be responsible for yourself." That hit different, not because it was profound, but because it was true and I'd never let myself think it. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Cordell who had the demeanor of a retired jazz musician and the habit of saying in a way that made you feel like he already knew the answer and was just waiting for you to catch up. He helped me see that my pattern with Colton wasn't just about generosity. It was about worth. Somewhere along the line, I'd internalized the idea that my value to my family was measured in what I could provide, and when I stopped providing, the silence confirmed my worst fear. That without the money, I wasn't needed. Dr. Cordell looked at me over his glasses and said, or maybe the silence confirmed theirs. That without the money, they had no use for you. Those are two very different things. That one sentence rewired something in my brain. I threw myself into work, not to escape, but because I genuinely loved what I did and I'd been so distracted by Colton's drama that I'd been coasting. My firm was expanding, and my boss Harlan, who was one of those guys who wore boots with his suit and somehow made it work, pulled me aside and asked if I'd be interested in leading a new advisory division focused on small business clients. It was a promotion, a raise, and a chance to build something from the ground up. I said yes before he finished the sentence. Sutton and I got married that spring. Small ceremony. 30 people. My mom was there, and she cried the whole time, which was exactly right. Colton wasn't invited because Sutton and I agreed that our wedding was not going to be a stage for his performance. It was the first major family event I'd ever planned without factoring in Colton's feelings, and it was also the happiest day of my life up to that point. I started mentoring young professionals through a program at our local community college, the same one I'd attended years ago. I coached a kid named Emmett who reminded me of myself at that age. Broke, smart, terrified, and too proud to ask for help until he had no other option. Helping him felt different than helping Colton. Emmett sent me a thank you card after he got his first accounting job. Handwritten. 2 paragraphs. More gratitude than Colton had shown me in 4 years and $22,000. By the time summer rolled around, I was in the best shape of my life, professionally and personally. I had a new title, a team I was building from scratch, a wife who made every room she walked into better, and a clarity about myself that I'd never had before. I wasn't angry at Colton anymore. I wasn't sad about it either. I was just done, and being done felt like breathing clean air after years of living next to a factory you didn't realize was there. And then, because the universe has a sense of humor that would make a screenwriter jealous, Colton's life started to unravel, and I didn't lift a finger to make it happen. I didn't have to. He did it all by himself. I found out about Colton's situation the way most people find out about family disasters these days, through a group chat I'd been silently lurking in since Thanksgiving. My cousin Deacon, who had originally sided with Colton, sent a message that was equal parts gossip and genuine concern. He said Colton and Brielle were behind on their rent. Not a little behind. 3 months behind. Their landlord had started the eviction process, and they had 30 days to either pay up or get out. This was in August, about 10 months after I'd sent that $7,000. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean the kind of ironic that makes you want to stand up and slow clap at the universe. Colton had been working at a car dealership again, the same kind of job he'd had before, and he was apparently decent at it when he showed up. The problem was the showing up part. According to Deacon, Colton had been missing shifts because Brielle kept insisting they needed to attend networking events for her new business venture, which was some kind of social media management company that, as far as I could tell, had no clients and a lot of ring lights. His manager gave him an ultimatum: be reliable or be gone. Colton chose to go to a brunch Brielle was hosting for quote-unquote potential investors, which turned out to be her friends from high school eating avocado toast. He got fired the next day. Without Colton's income, which wasn't much but was at least consistent, the bills started stacking up like Jenga blocks. The credit cards they'd maxed out for Ivy's birthday party and Brielle's business supplies came due. The car payment on the SUV that was way more vehicle than they needed fell behind. And the rent, which had apparently been tight even when Colton was working, became impossible. I watched all of this unfold from a distance, the way you watch a weather system approaching on radar. You know it's going to be bad. You just don't know exactly how bad or when it's going to hit. Sutton and I talked about it one night over dinner, and she asked me the question I'd been avoiding. Do you think he's going to call you? I said yes. She said, what are you going to say? And I said, no, just like that. No hesitation, no guilt, no internal debate. Just no. And Sutton nodded and said, good. Now eat your pasta before it gets cold. The call came on a Saturday morning in September. I was in my garage reorganizing my tool wall, which is the kind of thing I do when I'm content, because there's something deeply satisfying about knowing exactly where your 9/16 wrench is. My phone rang, and Colton's name popped up for the first time in almost a year. I let it ring 4 times while I decided if I even wanted to answer. Then I picked up, because despite everything, some part of me still needed to hear what he had to say. He didn't open with an apology. He opened with a story about how unfair everything was. His boss was unreasonable. The landlord was heartless. Brielle's business was about to take off, but they just needed a little more time. He talked for 6 straight minutes without taking a breath, and I listened to every word because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to be absolutely certain that nothing had changed. And nothing had. Not one thing. He was still the same Colton, still the victim of circumstances that he'd created, still narrating a version of events where he bore zero responsibility for any of it. When he finally paused, he said, Jake, I know things have been weird between us, but I really need your help. We're about to lose our place, and I don't know what else to do. And there it was. The same script. Different numbers, same play. I could almost hear the stage directions. Pause for effect. Let voice crack slightly. Invoke family bond. I said, Colton, I love you, but I'm not going to do this again. He started talking faster, the way people do when they feel the ground shifting under them. He brought up Ivy, which I expected. He said she needed stability, which was true, but was his responsibility to provide, not mine. He said mom couldn't help because she was on a fixed income, which was also true and also not my problem to solve. And then he said something that sealed it. He said, come on, man. It's not like $7,000 is a lot of money to you. I want you to sit with that for a second. My brother, who I'd given over $22,000 to over 4 years, who had used my most recent gift to throw a party I wasn't invited to, just told me that the money I earned through years of discipline and sacrifice wasn't a lot to me. Like I printed it in my basement. Like it just appeared in my account because the accounting fairy visited me in my sleep. The disrespect wasn't even hidden anymore. It was just right there, sitting on the table between us like a dead fish. I said, this conversation is over. I hope you figure things out. And I hung up. Then I went back to organizing my tools because that wrench wasn't going to sort itself. Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated in ways I didn't orchestrate, but also didn't prevent. Colton started calling other family members looking for money. He called Deacon, who told him he was tapped out. He called Aunt Rosalind, who gave him $500, and then called my mom to complain about it. He even reached out to our dad in Florida, who apparently said, and I'm paraphrasing based on Deacon's secondhand account, sorry, son, Jolene and I just invested in a crystal healing retreat, and our funds are tied up. Which is maybe the most Florida sentence ever spoken. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened at my firm. A small business owner named Waverly Tate walked into our office looking for financial advisory services. She ran a chain of boutique fitness studios across Middle Tennessee and was looking to expand. Harlan assigned her to my division, and over the course of several meetings, Waverly and I developed a strong working relationship. She was sharp, driven, and had the kind of business instinct that you can't teach. During one of our sessions, she mentioned she was looking for a silent partner to help fund her expansion. Someone with financial expertise who understood small business growth and wasn't just throwing money at a wall. I went home that night and told Sutton about it. She looked at me and said, "You're going to invest, aren't you?" I said I was thinking about it. She said, "How much?" I said I was considering $25,000. She raised an eyebrow, and I said, "That's roughly what I spent on Colton over 4 years with zero return. Maybe it's time to invest in someone who actually has a plan." Sutton smiled and said, "Now that's the Jacob I married." I did my due diligence, reviewed Waverly's books, analyzed her growth projections, consulted with Harlan, who gave me his blessing as long as I maintained proper boundaries between my advisory role and my investment. Everything checked out. Waverly's business was solid, her expansion plan was conservative but ambitious, and the potential return was significant. I wrote the check and became a silent partner in Tate Fitness Collective. And then, because timing in life is never accidental, Colton's eviction became final. He and Brielle and Ivy had to move in with Brielle's mother, a woman named Gemma who lived in a 2-bedroom apartment and had very strong opinions about how her daughter's husband had failed to provide. According to every source in the family chat, life in that apartment was about as fun as a root canal performed by someone who was also going through a divorce. Colton was sleeping on a pull-out couch, while Gemma reminded him daily that her daughter deserved better. Which, to be fair, Ivy certainly did. I didn't gloat. I didn't send a smug text. I didn't post anything on social media. I just lived my life. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small, petty part of me that felt a flicker of something close to satisfaction. Not because my brother was suffering. Because for the first time in our lives, the natural consequences of his choices were landing on him instead of being absorbed by me. And that felt like justice, even if it was the quiet, unglamorous kind. The confrontation I'd been bracing for came 3 months later, in December, at my mother's house. She'd invited both of us for Christmas dinner because that's what moms do. They keep setting the table and hoping everyone will sit down and act like civilized humans. Sutton and I debated whether to go, but ultimately decided that avoiding Mom's Christmas felt like punishing her for something Colton did, and she didn't deserve that. So we went. We brought a pecan pie and a bottle of wine, and the understanding that things might get uncomfortable. Colton was already there when we arrived. He looked different, thinner, tired in a way that went deeper than sleep deprivation. Brielle wasn't with him, and when Mom quietly mentioned that they were taking some space, I understood that to mean exactly what you think it means. Ivy was there, sitting on Mom's lap, gnawing on a wooden spoon like it was the greatest invention in human history. She saw me and reached out her arms, and for a second, the whole room stopped. I picked her up and she grabbed my ear, which is apparently the highest compliment a toddler can give you. Colton watched this happen, and something moved across his face that I hadn't seen there in a long time. It looked like shame. Dinner was polite in the way that funerals are polite. Everyone was on their best behavior because the alternative was too exhausting to contemplate. Mom made her brisket, which was perfect as always, and we talked about safe topics like the weather and whether that new bypass they were building was ever going to be finished. But I could feel Colton working up to something the way you can feel the static in the air before a thunderstorm. It happened while Mom was in the kitchen getting dessert. Colton looked at me across the table and said, "Can we talk?" Sutton glanced at me, and I gave her a small nod. She excused herself to help Mom, which was code for I'm going to be 15 feet away listening to every word. Colton leaned forward, elbows on the table, and for once in his life, he didn't start with a story about how unfair everything was. He started with, "I messed up." 2 words. Simple, direct, no qualifiers, no pivot to blame someone else. Just, "I messed up." And then he kept going. He said he'd been thinking about my text for months. The one I sent after the party. He said at first he was angry because it felt like I was keeping score, but the more time passed and the more things fell apart, the more he realized I wasn't keeping score. I was keeping boundaries, and those were different things. He said he'd been so used to me being there, always being there, that he'd stopped seeing it as a gift and started seeing it as a given. He said that was wrong. He said the party was wrong. He said not inviting me was Brielle's decision, but that he didn't fight it, and not fighting it was the same as agreeing with it. He said, "You sent me $7,000 because I said my daughter was sick, and 2 weeks later I let my wife throw a party you paid for and didn't even invite you. I don't know how to make that right, Jake. I don't know if I can." I sat there for a long time. The house smelled like brisket and cinnamon, and I could hear Mom laughing about something in the kitchen, and Ivy was babbling in her high chair. And for a moment, everything felt both very small and very big at the same time. I said, "Colton, I don't need you to make it right. I need you to be different." He nodded, and then I told him something I'd been carrying around for a long time. I told him about the spreadsheet. All $22,000. Every transaction, every date, every context. I told him that I didn't make that spreadsheet to punish him. I made it because I needed to see the pattern clearly so I could stop pretending it wasn't there. He looked down at the table, and I could see his jaw working the way it does when he's trying not to cry. Then I told him about Waverly, about the investment, about how I'd taken roughly the same amount of money I'd spent propping him up and put it into a business that was projected to double in value within 2 years. I told him I wasn't saying this to rub it in. I was saying it because I wanted him to understand that the money I gave him wasn't disposable. It had value. It had potential. And he treated it like it was nothing, which meant he treated me like I was nothing. He said, "I know." And for the first time, I believed him. We didn't hug. We didn't have a movie moment where everything was suddenly healed and the credits rolled over a montage of us throwing a football in the backyard. That's not how real life works. But something shifted. A crack appeared in the wall he'd built, and for the first time in a year, I could see my brother on the other side of it. That was 14 months ago. Here's where things stand now. Colton and Brielle officially separated. She moved to Atlanta with a guy she met at one of her networking brunches, which I'm told is exactly as messy as it sounds. Colton has primary custody of Ivy, which was the one thing he fought for with every ounce of energy he had, and I respect him for that more than I can say. He's back at a dealership, different one this time, and he's been there for 9 months straight, which is a personal record. He moved into a small apartment near Mom's house, and Mom helps with Ivy when he's working. He has not asked me for money. Not once. Not a hint. Not a joke. Not a casual mention of a tight month. He did, however, send me a Venmo for $200 about 4 months ago with the note, first of many. I know it's not enough, but it's a start. I almost didn't accept it because the gesture meant more than the amount. But I did, because accepting it was respecting the fact that he was trying to be accountable, and dismissing it would have been dismissing his effort. Waverly's fitness studios expanded to 6 locations. My investment is performing exactly as projected, and Harlan told me last month that I have the best instincts of anyone he's ever worked with, which, coming from a man who wears cowboy boots to client meetings, is the highest praise available. Sutton and I are expecting our first child in the spring. A boy. We're naming him after my mom's father, a man named Sullivan who built houses with his hands and never asked for credit. Felt right. Mom is doing well. She's healthy, she's happy, and she told me over the phone last week that she's proud of both her boys, which is the most mom thing anyone has ever said. I didn't correct her because she wasn't wrong. She was proud of who Colton was becoming, not who he'd been, and there's wisdom in that. As for that text I sent, the one that started all of this, I've thought about it a lot. 6 sentences. Took me maybe 90 seconds to type. But it changed the entire trajectory of my relationship with my brother because it was the first time I'd ever told him no. Not with anger, not with a lecture, just with honesty. And sometimes honesty is the most disruptive force in the world, not because it's cruel, but because it's undeniable. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. You are not a bad person for having limits. You are not selfish for refusing to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, especially when they keep showing up with matches. The people who love you will respect your boundaries. The people who don't will tell you that having boundaries makes you the problem. And the difference between those two groups will tell you everything you need to know. My name is Jacob. I'm 35 now. My brother called me crying, and I gave him $7,000 without thinking twice. His wife threw a party with 80 people and a live DJ, and I wasn't invited. I didn't confront him. I just sent one text. And that one text was the beginning of the best year of my life. Not because I got revenge, because I finally got honest. And it turns out, honesty pays better than generosity ever did.